I want to get deeply into your life and, your origins and all that kind of stuff. But I thought I would start by mentioning that today happens to be what would have been Jaki Byard's 101st birthday.
Wow,
He
right.
was born June 15th, 1922. So he would be 101, which is hard for me to imagine, Jaki. I mean, and I know that like Jaki and you, I just would like to start there. I have my own life experiences with Jaki, and he influenced me profoundly and was one of the real mentors for me. And I know that you had 18 lessons, you said, with him. And
Yeah.
can you tell me a little bit about just your impressions of Jaki musically and personally, and what you got from it, and that kind of stuff?
From Jaki?
Yeah.
I don't remember.
Yeah, well, it is kind of
because he didn't really show me anything. He didn't show me. He got me so excited. He got my brain going. I was teaching myself. That's why there was nothing in my notebooks. I went to find my 18 lessons and there was nothing in my notebooks because they didn't give me anything. Once he showed me some chord voicings on a passage. Mostly he'd play alto and I'd play piano, or he'd play drums and I played piano, and talk about stuff. It was very loose, but I always left there like with, my mind going to 1,000 thoughts,
Yeah, I mean, he had that way of doing that. You also said once that he swung you, which I thought was a beautiful.
Oh, that's right. And I borrowed that technique because that was a very effective technique in my teaching, because now I swing my students. I get their minds going so that they're breaking out of their framework, the context they're in,
Right, getting people into kind of the natural stream of consciousness flow that
right.
we get into when we're improvising, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that that's what I mean. I didn't really study with Jaki. I just used to go sit in with him every night when he was playing solo piano at top of the village gate. And
that's studying.
That was studying. That was studying. I'll just say a funny story about how I met him. It was very weird. I was very interesting. I think I knew a guy named Vince Lawrence, who later was Vince Maggio. He went by his real name.
Yeah, I know very well. Good friend of mine. He's down in Florida. Right. Wonderful piano player.
Yeah, he was one of my buddies, and one of my he brought me over his house and showed me a lot of stuff and this and that. And when I was a teenager, so I was like 16, 17. I'm in New York, and Vince says, "Oh, by the way, when you go up to New York, I used to go up and spend the summer in New York and hang out, and anyway, he said, when you're up there, Jaki Byard was a really good friend of mine, and he said we roomed together for a little while. So if you run into Jaki, tell him you know me." So he's playing solo piano opposite Billy Taylor at the Village Gate Saturday night, and Jaki's playing, and people are talking all the way through it. Billy Taylor plays; it's like a church. That just the idea of solo piano, people just want to talk, like bass solo.
Yeah.
But anyway, so he's not in a good mood, and I walk up to Jaki and I say, "Oh, Jaki, I'm a friend of Vince Lawrence," and Vince said, if I ran into you in New York to say hello, and he said, and I said I play the alto. He saw me he said, "You got a horn there?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "I'm wondering if I might be able to sit in with you." He says, "Oh yeah," and he walks away from me. He says, "Wait here." So I wait, and I wait about 20 minutes, and he comes back, and he says, "If I do let you play, what do you want to play?" I said, "Just friends." He said, "All right, I'll tell you what. You go up and you start playing Just Friends by yourself. And if I like what you're playing, I will come up and join you. If you don't like it, then you got a whole set of solo saxophone on your hands. Because I don't like this audience anyway. I'm ready to go home. So, it's up to you. Just go up and play." I was like 17. So I went up and I started playing. And then he started running to the bandstand like this, and joined me. And our friendship began,
Yeah. Yeah, he was a great guy, man. He was just a great guy. He was amazing. He was one of those guys. He was a master, I used to hear him play solo piano opposite Herb Pomeroy's band at the stable, and he'd outswing the big band.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Get standing ovations.
Really, I can imagine that. Now you had your early career, you were sort of like a house pianist at the Stables and at Lenny's and at Connolly's and all of these legendary Boston clubs. There was that great era, which I think you kind of came up at the end or sort of the middle end of that period where, the Boston had all these wonderful, the Charlie Marianos and the Joe Gordon and those kind of people what was that like? How did that come about that you got those gigs and who you played with and what meeting that generation of Boston guys and stuff?
That's kind of an open question. How did it come about? The Stables gig, when my junior year of high school, I spent it. My parents thought I might be an engineer, and they sent me to a engineering prep school in Boston. Unfortunately, it was almost right across the street from the Stable, and it was really stiff, this school. All the kids had jackets and ties and all that stuff, and I'm coming in there funky looking and all. So when the lunch break started, I'd go across the street to the Stable and hang out because they'd be rehearsing. I got to hear Dick Twasik and Serge, everybody there. And I started taking bongo lessons with the janitor, And,
now, had you played piano? You already had been playing piano. Did you kind of start at a young age, just interject, like you'd already been playing?
My parents made me take classical piano, and I the last thing I thought I was going to be when I grew up was a piano player,
Interesting.
But and eventually, towards the end of the semester, I got 2 lessons with Ray Santisi, the piano player.
Muzzy, yeah, I knew him well.
The second lesson, he said, "Forget it, kid. You'll never play."
That sounds like Muzzy.
Okay. So years later, I'm playing the Stables. I've got the Monday night with Gene DeStacio's band with Sam Rivers,
who was a dentist. I remember
with Sam Rivers, Jimmy Zatano, and John Neves. The Tuesdays and Thursdays with the big bands, and all the other gigs with the Herb's Quintet. And I'm playing there, and Muzzy comes up to me. That was his nickname. On an intermission, right. He says, "Hal, do you remember me telling you that you'll never play again in your second lesson?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "I learned a lesson from that." He said, "Never second guess a student," because I had all his gigs.
That's funny. Yeah, Muzzy.
Yeah.
Quite a guy. He was a. Did he ever cook for you?
No.
He was a great cook. I actually we played a week in Boston. A couple of times we played in Boston together, and he actually introduced me to Art Farmer, which was very nice. But
the story was he wouldn't leave home because of his mom's refrigerator. He didn't want to eat any place else in the world except at his mother's house.
Well, that may be where he got his cooking, because man, he cooked me dinner one night, and he made this fish, and I've rarely had a baked fish this good. What he did, he put grapes on it. He cut up these seedless green grapes and baked it with the fish, which he put a little sauce on it of some kind, and it was the most incredible fish, better than any restaurant you could ever go to. So then, if that was where he got it, if it was his mother, now I understand. And but now, one other thing, Dick Twardzik, he's been like a cat that I really was fascinated by from the first time I heard. The only record that he made was just that thing called The Last Set.
He made a record with Chet too. I have a copy of it.
Oh, he did that one, but the record on his own. He only really did one record, which was half a record of Russ Freeman and half a record of Twardzik.
You're talking about Crush for a Crab and all those things. Yeah, right.
Exactly. And
but there's a Chet Quartet album with Jimmy Bond and Peter Lipman.
Yeah, Chet Baker in Paris. Randy,
Yeah, yeah.
with you, and you had the people. I mean, people were really standing up during Mike's solos. Mike was at a certain point. I mean, everybody was playing great, but there was a certain period where, talk about big beats again. Mike was just swinging the roof off. Randy was playing great. You and Wayne Dockery and Billy Hart, as I recall, that was the band that I remembered being down there. And your compositions were just great. And I never sat in with you guys because you didn't need me. I mean, I learned, I mean, I could come and play my ass off, but it was going to just change the vibe, so I never even brought my horn to hear you guys. And I was a real pain in the ass. I like to sit in with everybody at that time, but this band I didn't sit in with. I just wanted to listen to.
Yeah, it was a great band. Great band.
So I'd like to, on our way out, I mean, we'll talk a little bit more, but just before we go, I'd like to play this one tune that we found that I liked, called Spit It.
Yeah, that's the first quintet album.
Right. So let's listen to this tune for a minute. We can just hear what was some of that magic that was going on. Yeah. Well,
Was,
just
the
imagine a whole night of that.
When we were on the West Coast, and Phil called up Stan Getz because Stan was sick and dying. Phil says, "I think I'm going to write something for you, man. What would you like me to write?" He said, and Stan says, "Something celestial."
Something celestial. That's great. Yeah,
those guys they were great one-liners.
there really were. In
Yeah,
fact, when you were mentioning George Shearing, Michael Moore, the bass player. One night, Shearing was playing, and he had a bass player who we won't mention, but the bass player was a little below par, wasn't in Shearing's league, and somehow maybe was subbing for somebody, but it was a duo, and Michael Moore was kind of half in his cups, and he walks in and he listens to the band for a second, and he says to me, "Oh my God, the blind are leading the deaf."
Yeah, that's some great classic ones. So, what were some of your questions?
Okay, well, the guys in Boston, first of all, Jimmy's inspiration, Charlie Mariano was really like the bird of Boston in his way. That's what Gene DeStacio used to call him. And did you get some experience with Charlie?
Yeah, yes, I did. Yeah, he was. He was teaching at Berkeley when I was there, going as a student. But later on, I got to know him differently. We only played together, and that's another story where I learned what stroll meant. First time I heard the word stroll was on a gig with Charlie Mariano. We were playing Boots Masuli's club in Framingham.
That's another one of my questions.
Yeah, and the bandstand was like what was that club in New York City where it was behind a bar and it was in a line behind the bar. Yeah, no. It was in Midtown. It was near Times Square. Oh, Condon, you played there all the time. All the swing players played there all the time. Anyway,
not Nick's.
No, I can't think of it now. Anyway, the bandstand was all in a line behind. So it was me on one end, then Herb was next to me, and then it was John Neves on bass after him, and then Jimmy Zatano on drums, and then at the other end was Charlie. So I couldn't really hear him, that well. I was playing by radar. So Charlie starts to solo, and he turns around, he takes his horn out of his mouth, turns around, and you hear with an angry look on his face. I look at Herb, and I said, "Herb," he said, So we keep on playing, he stops playing again, he turns around, looks at me like even more angry. I said, Herb, what's he saying? And he comes over to me, he says, "I think he's telling you to play louder." I said, "Oh, okay." So I started banging and banging and banging, and sure enough, he turns around and he goes, at the end of the night, I get out there, I says, "Charlie, what were you yelling at me?" He says, "Stroll." I says, "What the fuck does that mean?" I'd never heard the phrase before, lay out.
Yeah, well, I told Joe Cohn one time, the first time I told Joe Cohn to stroll, he actually put his guitar down and started walking around the club. He thought that's what I meant, and I told him to think, maybe he thought that was...
You told me that story a long time ago.
Yeah, right, I know that. he thought that was maybe a method to
yeah, right.
Prove his playing.
That was the first time I heard the word stroll.
That's funny, man. That's funny. And I only met him once, Charlie, but he was quite a, and I love.
He was a hard taskmaster though. You could hear him swearing down in the basement of Berkeley at his bands. I mean, it was outrageous. It was a totally blue discourse.
Wow. But he seemed so calm, the night that I did meet him, my quick story of Charlie is funny that I was a big party at Mike Knox, the piano player. Mike had this loft in New York, and it was one of this typical. It looked like breakfast at Tiffany's. All these people jammed into a space, and it was a pretty big space, but it's still New York party. There had to be over 100 people there, like really, walking around. And Charlie was in this white Nehru suit from India because he'd come from India, and he had this beautiful like silk or rayon, whatever it was, beautiful with fine materials, all white, very very nice. And I was drinking red wine. We were talking, and I was really happy to meet Charlie. And I was asking him all these questions about life and music and everything down to mouthpiece, And then somebody bumps into me, and the red wine goes all over Charlie's white suit. And I'm mortified. I'm like, Charlie, please, I'm sorry. Let me, send me the bill, the cleaning bill. You're in town for a week. I'll get it fixed. Give me that, after, tomorrow I'll pick it up and take it to dry cleaner. And Charlie sits there listening to me rant, and he just says to me, well, I think that you should get another glass of wine.
My kind of guy.
My kind of guy, and I loved him then,
Yeah.
But that was, then Ray Santisi, you must have.
Oh, yeah. Oh, sure. My first 2 piano lessons with him. And he told me, forget it, kid, you'll never play.
That's so much.
10 years later, I had his job at the stables. Every night I had his job. Monday nights with Gene DeStacio's band. Tuesdays and Thursdays with Herb's big band. Wednesdays and the weekends with the Vardy Haratunian quintet with Herb and Vardy, And
Vardy ended up owning the Jazz Workshop, right?
Yeah, yeah. So he was always I totally forgot that he told me that. And it wasn't until I actually had he gave me his job because he was too busy at the school and he'd been playing there forever. It's not like I took it away from him. He gave it to me. It's great. He's always anything I asked him for. He never held back. Great guy, very wise, had a lot of wisdom. I wrote a story about him on Facebook. It's there. I talked about my first trip to New York. First time. Right, yeah, really was great. He came out of Bud. That was fascinating. And he had little hands. And he was the first piano player I heard play block chords in the middle of a solo.
Uh-huh.
Usually they're reserved for, to build up the end of a solo, right? But he would introduce the chords in the middle of a solo. I thought you weren't allowed to do that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And I thought that was great. That lesson, you can hear that lesson in me all the time. I never forgot that.
And Boots Masuli, he was another great alto player from that. Like Charlie and he were the same age, or because they.
No, Boots was older.
Boots was older.
Yeah.
And he was a Bird influenced alto player, and
played for incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, these guys were not recorded. I mean, Charlie got recorded quite a bit, but Boots you don't hear very much of.
No.
And what I've heard sounds wonderful, and a lot of those cats you didn't. Jimmy did make a few records. Finally, Chick Corea, I think Chick produced a couple things for him toward the end of his life.
Yeah, I was trying to I didn't like any of his records. I don't think they did it. He had the right people and the right material, but I told him, let me do one with you, and we were going to do one, and then he died.
Yeah, I wish you had. I heard it with Jim. He and Mick Goodrick had a nice band together, and that was an interesting thing because Mick pushed him in interesting directions, much in a way you might have, I thought.
Yeah. Well, I heard them in there was a drummer, Andy Boland, that had a quintet with Jimmy in it, and Paul, John Neves on bass, and Bob Dogen on piano, who was my idol at the time. and it influenced my swing beat a lot because I followed him around like a little puppy dog, you know.
Now that's an influence that's very interesting because that's another cat. You know, we all have these influences that, yeah, everybody knows about Bud and everybody knows, you know, of course,
Yeah.
bird influences. But now Bob Dogen was a piano player, ended up in Chicago, right? And can you tell
Right.
us a little bit about background, like who was Bob Dogen and what drew
Well,
him in?
you know, he was older than me. He was a great guy, and he would play with anybody. He didn't have he wasn't fussy. He just he was the greatest guy you could ever meet. And like I said, wherever I fall, he used to reduce me to tears just to hear this guy play. And he was the only piano player I heard who came out of Horace,
Oh,
which was really interesting. So then he got a gig. Oh, he got drafted. He got drafted, and it ruined him.
was that the
They
Vietnam period he got drafted, or was it Korea? Uh,
probably 60s,
so Vietnam, yeah.
Vietnam. And but he wasn't serving. He was running. They had him on a typewriter. It was the worst thing you could do with a piano player. Then he came back to Chicago, and
Really?
and then I had, and we never lost touch. He was always calling me and calling each other. So I went to Chicago. I was touring with my trio, and Bobby was playing in a club. I noticed, and we had a day off on that day. Bobby was playing, and I hadn't seen him, and he had come to New York, and he was one of those guys like Charlie LaChapelle, who just New York was not good for him. You know what I mean? He couldn't
Yeah,
handle.
very
Yeah.
wrong.
We kicked him out of town. We don't want you here. So I went to hear him play. I hadn't heard him in years, and it wasn't the Bob that I remember. You know. Then he asked me to sit in. I burned him off the stage, man. I
Wow.
put, and that was really, I couldn't help myself, but I kicked his ass, and I didn't mean to. I just was on that level at that time in my career that even if I didn't try, that was a very uncomfortable feeling to be kicking the ass of your idol.
Yeah.
And he never said he was he didn't that kind of thinking didn't even come to Bobby. He just say, "Oh, Hal, you sound beautiful, blah blah." Give me a big hug and everything like that. But I'm in this position. I said, "What did I do, man? This is one of my best friends, and I just outplayed him, And it
This was
didn't.
New York.
Huh?
This is New York. Or this
What?
Chicago or New York?
Chicago.
Chicago. That's his hometown. Yeah.
Yeah. He had a Sunday afternoon gig or something, and we had that day off, and I went and hung out. That was oh man, he was great about it. I was the one that was feeling funny.
Did
But
he also sing, or
huh?
did he sing as well, or do?
Oh yeah, we finally got him in. Everybody's trying to get him to sing, do a vocal album,
Right.
and
Yeah.
and he finally did it. I got it. It's fabulous. It's just fabulous.
Oh, I got
He's,
to hear it. I'd love to hear that.
oh man, I'll see if I can send it to you.
Because I never heard him, and I don't think the world ever heard this guy. Really, he never.
And the thing is, he actually ended up because we weren't on a contact on a daily basis, but he came up with a thing of his own. You could hear it in the way he arranged it and the tunes and all that stuff uh, on his instrumental stuff. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
He had a thing of his own. He came up with a sound.
I mean, for me, that was the best that I ever heard Mike play. I mean, Mike played great all the time, but that was, I mean, both of the brothers, that band was on fire. And I didn't really go back and hear bands a lot. But that band I went to hear every Sunday that you played at Basel when you had that gig. And I said, oh, this band should be on the road. You could do part of time that, and they could have the Brecker Brothers, and that would be good. But of course, it's always the business people that,
Yeah.
somebody, I think.
Well, we did do a 10-day tour before the New Orleans recording, which was historic. Especially because we were stuck in Bloomington, Indiana during the snowstorm of history, No trains, no planes. People came to the gig in snowshoes.
That would be, yeah, difficult. Now,
Anyway, yeah, that was a good. That was. What's your next question?
well, I was just then there was Gordon Brisker, who was a fine tenor player, and he told me he was on Woody's band, Woody Herman's band, and he was getting a lot of solos, and everything was going swimmingly. And then Soundistico showed up,
Uh-oh.
and Gordon said that was it.
Back. That's mid-50s. I don't.
Well, mid-50s, wasn't Berkeley originally called Schillinger House?
Yeah, they still had his. It was called Berkeley at the time, but they still had Joe Schillinger's picture in the lobby, and it looked like "What Me Worried" from Mad Magazine.
Alfred E. Newman.
Alfred E. Newman, right?
So when you went to Berkeley, was that kind of like one of the original? It hadn't been around for that long.
No, it hadn't. No, it was pretty new. It was filled with Breton, that's Korean War. It was filled with veterans,
Right.
all older guys, And in Herb's class, we were stratified. The guys who needed the most help were in the front rows, and all the veterans were in the back row with the open bottles of vodka and the cigarettes and smoking joints, and answering every question and passing every test easily, and having a ball in the back row while everybody else in the front 3 rows of the class was trying to figure out what's going on. And Herb let us do that. That was a rowdy bunch. Yeah.
Did you ever study some Schillinger?
Yes, I did. Yeah, yes. It was very impactful on me. Very impactful. It made me realize there were good reasons why something sounded good and why they all sounded bad. And when I realized that, and also that was part of the contribution of forward motion, because Schillinger analysis is done from the end backwards. You go from the last note forward towards the beginning note to understand how you got there. So that's that, and that made me realize what was happening at the end was what was important. So that was a part of forward motion. Things were always in motion towards the end. And then Madame Shaloff made a mark on one of the pieces that I was playing, a Bach piece, starting on the second eighth note, going down to the first eighth note of the next bar. That was a forward motion phrase mark.
Ah.
That also contributed to it. It was one of the elements that started cooking in there about forward motion.
So you can
I had always
expanding and contracting, and
and I had always had a curiosity. I don't know, I didn't know anything about music, but I always had a curiosity about the nature of one of the bar. It seemed like a beat I really had to understand for some reason, and that's what got me into forward motion.
one of the bar.
Yeah,
The one.
the one.
Yeah.
There was something about it that I had to learn. I don't know. I didn't know what it was at the time. It's totally naive. Which you were talking about the spiritual aspect of perhaps things coming from another source. I believe the opposite. I believe we're the source of it all. That we already have everything in us. For instance, people ask me about the big beat all the time. How did you get it? Well, you're born with it, but it only develops if you're playing with other people who have the big beat, so they can bring it out of you. That's what it's all about. It takes a signal from the environment to make it active. So I always had a big beat. I didn't know it until I played with Cannonball, where it really got big, and it never got any smaller. It kept on getting bigger after that.
Uh-huh. By big beat, can you define that for those of who might?
No.
Yeah, I mean, is there a way to define it?
No, it's just that way you can attack at any place in the scale. Any place between top and bottom, you could attack a beat. You have absolutely, it's that big. When I joined the band, you know how tight their ensembles were, right? Nat, and Cannon said they always played their ensembles in the same place on the beat, and I was always a hair too soon, or for a year, or too late. It wasn't until Booker showed me something that Shirley Hawn showed him about playing bass, which was the hesitation beat, which is to hesitate just slightly before you hit every beat. And it adds a rhythmic impulse to it that's amazing. I've internalized that. I do everything that way now.
And that may be what some people, would call laying back.
No, it's so quick. It just changes your placement. Johnny Vidakovich describes it as somewhere between 2 and 3 of the hemiola.
Okay. Hemi-demi-demi quavers, yes.
Jerry says it's 51% of the beat. That it's hilarious. Anyway, you can't hear the big beat. You listen to Jimmy Cobb on Kind of Blue. His beat is kind of thin, right? A little. It gives the impression. But where do you play with him? I finally got a chance to play with him when Nat came to Sweet Basil with his band after Cannon died. Jimmy Cobb was playing, and I got a chance to sit in with him. And I was shocked at how big his beat was. You had to figure out where you wanted to hit stuff, And in Cannon's band, it took me a year to figure out the hesitation and to get the exact placement of where they did this stuff. And once I got that, my beat started to grow and grow and grow, to the point where I could carry a band, But I can't just. You're born with it. You're born with everything that happens. You just need stimulation from the external environment. I think all that stuff. I think the zone is where the meditation comes from. It's an internal process when you shut the forebrain down. That's not to me, it's scientific. It's not spiritual. I have a scientific bend more than a spiritual bend. I always have. So I don't believe in magic. No. Well, I played with Sonny for 2 weeks at Connolly's, and I got a recording of us playing at the concert at Father O'Connor's TV show. And it was funny. We're setting up for the first night, and he says, "Hey, boy, blues in F." So it's just he and I. We play 2 choruses, blues in F. I'm following everything he does. He says, "Okay, you got that's okay, boy." Okay, boy. That was my audition. He knew in 2 choruses I was okay. And basically I followed him. It's I have to remember. I don't think I close comped him. I think he wanted you to lay down the time. I tell you, he kicked my butt for 2 weeks. That was the first time I realized he had a big beat, and he was kicking my butt tune after tune. I never had a saxophone player swing that hard as Sonny did. What a lesson that was! Wow. It was great. 2 weeks with him. Amazing. Those guys who were doing singles, they were heroes, man.
Also, you play some nice duets with Konitz too.
Oh yeah. Well, 9 months at that club up on East 96th Street. I got the poster for it. I have it framed somewhere. I have the poster of that gig where we're advertised. Where the club owner sang a couple of tunes with us.
Yeah, that was Gregory's.
Gregory's, right. We were there 9 months playing duo.
Yeah, I would sometimes sub for him over there, but not with you. We had different Dick Cats usually.
Yeah.
With him.
Well,
I think we've definitely run through some very nice things, nice stories, found some common ground. It was wonderful again to talk to the great Hal Galper and realize what an extensive career you've had. And, we look forward to hearing more and more from Hal. Just he's writing a lot on Facebook these days, and um, any recording projects, anything's coming out, or anything you want us to know of upcoming performances, or something you want to?
No, I broke up my band up here. Um, uh, and I'm not going to play with anybody unless they're on the same level as I am. I'm not going to play any gigs unless I'm playing with equals.
Yeah, I
So
think that's probably wise, and well, we certainly did cover a lot of ground today, and I really appreciate it, Hal.
well, Bob's always a pleasure, and I really had to know. I'm going to write that story about Slide. I really had to. It was too nice that we stayed there. That I stayed there at your house that
Yeah.
time. If it weren't for your friends, sometimes.
Oh yeah, that was yeah. Well, we were both in good hands.
All right, man.
Thanks again, Hal.
Sure, always a pleasure, man.
That's it. We thank you again. Thanks to Jessy Kaiser for her wonderful production, and many thanks to the great Hal Galper for joining us today. And God bless you, and Hal, may the fourth be with you.
May the Schwartz be with you.
May the Schwartz be with you.
I'll see you, man.